Hi guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time is applicable to your time zone. For me, it's somewhere around 5 a.m. IST. I'm from India, so yeah. So good morning, guys, again, and I thank you for subscribing my channel even before uploading my first interactive video that I'm going to upload right now for you guys. So thanks again. So let's start. So this video I'll be talking about in this video about creating Azure site-to-site VPN, and I'll be giving you the description about my lab, my home lab, and how I set up my lab. How I'll be giving you the tour of my home lab, and then I'll be giving you the detail of my Azure setup and how I'll be creating the Azure site-to-site VPN and site-to-site VPN connection to connect to my home network. So let's start, guys, with the demonstration, quick demonstration. So yeah, I'm going to start. So the agenda is basically, first of all, I'll be introducing myself, and then I'll be giving you some look of my home lab, and then I'll be giving you some tool of my home lab and Azure tiering, and then we'll be doing pretty much hands-on for creating site-to-site VPN in Azure, and then we'll be testing the tracer and RDP to the private IP of Azure VM. At the end of the day, we'll be successfully creating the site-to-site VPN connection, and we'll be able to, hopefully we'll be able to connect RDP the private IP and ping the private IP and tracer the private IP of our Azure VM. So let's continue. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Ashish Sharma. I prefer to be called as AshTechie. I love this name. Yeah. So talking about myself a bit. um, so I bring with 20 plus years of experience. In fact, 24 years and 11 months. I started working in November 1997 as a door-to-door support, desktop support engineer. And as of now, I come with mix and match experience of Vental, VMware, Microsoft Azure Cloud, AWS Cloud, Microsoft Cyber Security, Infrastructure as Code, AWS, DevOps, Ansible, Google Cloud, and this is all about me. So now let's come to the main agenda, and I'll be switching off my webcam here, so that I can present the full screen for you guys. Give me a moment, please. So welcome back again. So what we'll be talking about, what is Azure site-to-site VPN first. So Azure site-to-site VPN is a gateway connection which is used to connect your on-premises network to an Azure virtual network over an IPsec, IK VPN tunnel. So this type of connection require a VPN device. It could be a hardware device, it could be a software device, which needs to be located on your on-premises that has external IP, external facing IP assigned to it. So in our scenario, we'll simply be using pretty general Airtel, my Airtel fiber Wi-Fi router. For that I already have a static IP assigned to it. So I requested my internet service provider to have a static IP, and then I configured it on my router. Why static IP is required? Because you will be defining this static IP In the local network gateway, when when you'll be creating the site to site VPN connection, a local network gateway is again very much required component, wherein you'll be defining the static public IP of your Wi-Fi router device. So if you don't take the static IP, that IP will be dynamic and keeps changing again and again and again. So in that case, you'll probably need to modify your VPN configuration in Azure cloud multiple times. So by this nature of dynamic IP, we prefer to, or it is recommended, pretty much recommended, to have static IP for your on-premise Wi-Fi router. So we'll be simply using this way. We'll be using static IP, and we'll be using a Windows file server for VPN and routing, remote routing access purpose. Moving on to next. So this is how a conceptual diagram for Azure site-to-site VPN. So this is how it works. So in Azure, cloud side, we have our Azure tier, Azure account, Azure subscription. Then we have our Azure virtual network. We have resource group. We have our resources like Azure VMs. We have our VNets. We have our subnets. We have our VPN gateway, so that we will be creating here. And this VPN, at the right side, we have our on-premises, environment. So I do have VMware workstation installed on one of my machine, wherein I have couple of hypervisors running and couple of VMs running. So yeah. So in typical scenario, at the on-premises side, as shown in the diagram here in the slide, a routing device, a proper Cisco router or any other vendor related router, generally be there. But in our case, I'll be using simple Wi-Fi router, Wi-Fi devices that is provided by my internet service provider that I use to connect to the internet. So yeah, so this is a pretty much diagram, and in the lower side, in the left, lower side, you can see my Azure cloud VNet and subnet details. So I'll be using Azure virtual network with the IP addressing scheme of 10.3.0.0 with /22 side annotation. My workload subnet will be 10.3.2.0 with /24 side annotation. So my subnet mask will be 255.255.252.0. So I'll be using gateway subnet as 10.3.1.0/27, and I'll be demonstrating a VM which will be having the IP address like 10.3.2.4. So here comes in the right side, talking about the IP addressing scheme of my home network. So as I already told you, I've already taken one static public IP from my ISP and configured it in my Wi-Fi router. So at my Wi-Fi router, behind that public IP network, my virtual network, virtual IP addresses will be 192.168.1.0/24, and the routing and red server that I'll be using, Windows RRS server IP, will be 192.168.1.188. So moving on to next slide. This picture shows pretty much our scenario. Like, in place of router shown in the right side, we will be using remote and routing server, RRS server, as a VPN server. In our scenario, since we do not have routers, we will be routing the traffic coming from our on-premises home lab to my Azure subnet, will be routed through this particular RRS server, and then it will be further going through my Wi-Fi router and connecting with the VPN gateway, talking to the VPN gateway directly through a demand dial interface, and connecting to my Azure network. So in below again the same IP network detail for my Azure infrastructure side and home lab side. So pretty much same. Yeah. Next slide. Well, we will be talking about the steps to create a site-to-site VPN. So what we'll be doing here, we'll first be planning, like, we'll be asking our internet service provider to provide a static IP address for your Wi-Fi router, as I already told. And then you'll, set up a mini home lab. Probably you can use the VMware workstation for that. I use the same, or you can use any other, hypervisor, type 2 hypervisor for the same. As in step 2, I've already set up routing and remote, access server as a Windows server in my home lab. So please comment if you want me to have to create a separate video on how to create a routing and dash server, create and configure routing dash server in home lab, and I'll try to create a video for that as well. So we will be doing some configuration in step 2, but routing and remote access server is already installed with these roles and features. So yeah, so we'll be doing a bit of configuration there, like creating a demand dial interface according to our VPN gateway. But we'll be more, mostly talking about step number 3, like, we will have an Azure account. So we already have Azure account. I do have Azure account. I already created VNets and subnets. I already created a resource group. I already created a VM. So what we'll be actually doing here is we'll be creating a local network gateway and Azure virtual private network gateway, and then we'll be setting up Azure site-to-site VPN connection here, and then we'll be further, I have already set up my, as in step 4, I already set up my, broadband router, but I can show you the static route which I defined here in my broadband router and how it works. And then, in the step 2, coming back to step 2, we'll be creating a demand dial, interface there to connect to our VPN. And then finally, in the step 5, we'll be launching our Azure VM and testing the connectivity, whether we can ping, whether we can, trace route using the traceroute command, or whether we can RDP the Azure VM hosted in my Azure subnet through its private IP or not. So guys, moving ahead, we will summarize, what we learned so far. So yeah, so moving ahead, I'll be giving you the tour for my lab. So this is pretty much my server. Server IP is again a 192.168.1.182 scheme that I told you. That I'm using 192.168.1.0/24 subnet here in my local area network behind the public IP. So yeah, so talking about the VMware workstation, guys, this is my VMware workstation I'm using. I created a domain controller, but it is not required for this VPN connectivity. But I'm just giving you a tour of my VM. So in the root of in the root of this type 2 hypervisor, I created in the VMware workstation, I created a domain controller. So this is my domain controller. If I go into it and open the dsc.msc, so guys, this is my domain ashtechie.edu, which I created here. So I do have created two of the ESXi server, Ash ESXi 1 and Ash ESXi 2. The 2 is powered off to save the resources like memory and CPU uses as now, and it is not required as of now. And this is my ESXi server. The IP of this ESXi server is again 192.168.1.0. So it's 192.168.1.186. So in this particular ASXI server, I hosted couple of VMs. So we'll be going there as well. And coming out from here, this is my virtual center infrastructure, which is again highlighted here. And my VC name is ashvc.ashdomain.edu, and my routing and remote access server is AshSRV01. This is my routing and remote access server. Fair enough. So let's have a tour of my, so this is what you can see here is my virtual center environment. Like, this is my virtual center, this is my virtual center data center, this is my cluster named as Ash cluster, and these two are my ESXi server. Then this one ESXi server is up, and this is the server I was talking about. This is the routing and remote access server. This is here, it is hosted. Alright, and as a data store, I'm using a USB brick which I presented as a VMFS data store here as iSCSI SAN, and then named it as AshSAN. So moving ahead to our Azure cloud, this is my tier, Azure tier. So I have, default domain as ashtechie.com as shown here. Okay, and this is my subscription, and if you go to into my, let's say, Azure AD, yeah, so I have defined a custom domain here in my Azure AD. You can see this is the custom domain I have defined in the Azure AD. And in future I'll be connecting my, home lab Azure AD from through this Azure AD connect to Azure, and I'll be syncing my user to Azure cloud in Azure AD. Alright, so moving back to the home screen, what I have created, let me show you. This is my subscription. This is AshTechie pay as you go subscription here, and so in this subscription, moving back to home again, in the resource group, what I have created is a resource group named AshTechie RG Home Lab. Okay, so in this resource group, as of now, I don't have anything. If you see, I have only one machine, virtual machine, and its related components, and I do have this particular VNet, which I already told I already created, like named as AshTech VNet Home Lab. So if I browse to this for you guys, you can see that this is the default VNet, which always gets created, like 10.0.0.0, 10.0.0.0, you can say /16. So what I have created and told about you is 10.3.0.0.22. This is my VNet that I created and named as AshTechie VNet Home Lab. If I talk about the subnet, so we'll not be using default subnet. So what subnet I created here is AshTechie subnet home lab workload. So this is my subnet, and my subnet range, as I told you in the slide, is 10.3.2.0/24. So we'll be having 250 IPs. That is more than enough for me for my home lab testing and all. Alright, so if I check the connected device, you can see this particular, this is a virtual machine network interface NIC card basically, which has the static IP as I already told you in the slide. So static IP is 10.3.2.4. So yeah, guys, coming back to home screen, you can see. Okay, so but before going to the virtual machine, okay, let me give you the before going to the virtual machine, what we can probably do, we can first create the local network gateway. So guys, local network gateway is nothing but something like we are telling Azure cloud about our on-premises network. Like I'll be telling Azure cloud by creating this local network gateway, I'll be telling Azure cloud that hey Azure cloud, my local network public IP will be this particular IP, and my private range which is sitting behind this particular static public IP which is at my home on-premises lab will be this particular slider notation, like this network IP network slash the subnet bits. So that is called CIDR notation, CIDR, classless interdomain routing. So yeah, so we'll be creating this particular look local network gateway here. So first of all, we need to select the subscription. I only have one subscription, that is my pay as you go subscription. Then I'll be selecting a resource group. So I've already created the resource group I showed, which only has one VM which is powered off and one subnet, VNet and subnet. Okay, so you can, if you're not having the resource group, you can create the new one from here. Since I'm from India, so I'll be choosing the central India, and this particular resource group has already been created in central India. So now I'll have to name. So I've already chosen the name for this. Yeah, guys, go back to here. So we are creating the local network gateway here. So we can give any name though, but what I'll do, let me copy this stuff from here to again to my home lab here. And if I talk about the local network gateway, this is the name I decided I'll be keeping. You can give any name, whatever name you want. So I'm simply giving AshTechie LNG, stands for local network gateway. Why we are creating local network gateway? We are creating local network gateway to to tell Azure about our home lab. So this is our home lab to Azure connection. Fine enough. So yeah, so this is where we'll be we'll be giving our the public IP that we have defined, that we have taken from the ISP, and we have configured it on our router. Since I don't want to show you the public IP, I'll be mentioning this public IP here, and then what we'll have to do, I'm sorry, we'll have to define our local IP address range here that we are using. So I already told you that we are using 192.168.1.0/24. So that is the address I'll be using here. So it is asking for adding additional. I'm not adding additional. So I'll pause the video for some time, for a sec, and I'll give the static public IP of my router here, and I'll click on review and create, and then I'll click next to finish, and then it will come in the notification here. So guys, let me pause the video for some time and I'll get back to you soon. Welcome back guys. So you can see that the deployment of the local network gateway is in progress. It will take some time, and yes, it is created here. So if you go back to home and check the local network gateway, you can see the local network gateway here, which is created with the name we define in the same resource group, in the same subscription in central India. So now the next thing what we need to do is we need to create a virtual network gateway. So virtual network gateway is something which is a public network gateway for from Azure side. This is the Azure offering again to connect, our on-premises network to Azure cloud, or we can connect, anything like our home office, home lab, or on-premises network. So we'll be creating, you know, the virtual network gateway here. And in the virtual network gateway here, what I'll do, I'll give the name here. So guys, this is going to take some time. Okay, so what I'll be doing, you can see the different things here. Okay, by the time you will be checking, I'll be changing the password here. So for virtual network gateway, I decided this name, so I'm giving this name here. As you can see, it is taking the location. It's already taking the location here as per the, yeah. So the gateway type will not be express route. Express route is a direct circuit, like in AWS we have direct connect. So we'll be creating the VPN. We'll go with the default route based VPN type. It is a route based VPN type, and these are the SKUs of the VPN, like and the pricing are associated with these SKUs with different speeds. So I'll not go with the basic, but I'll go with VPN gateway one. You can Google about the different type of SKUs and their pricing for these different tiering of the VPN gateway SKUs. So yeah, so I'll be using this particular generation 1 only for VPN gateway 1, and then I'll be defining the virtual network here. This is my virtual network, and the gateway subnet I already told you that I'll be using in the slide. I told you I'll be using. So let me cross check as well. If I go over to the slide, this is the detail. So the gateway subnet what I told is that I'll be using 10.3.1.0/27. Okay, so let's go back. So this is the virtual network gateway I'll be using. Yeah, so guys, this virtual network gateway will be using a public IP address. So we'll have to define the public IP address, and then for this public IP address, we'll have to specify a name. So this is the name I already, to save the time, already selected, written like AshTechie, Virtual Network Gateway VNG, Azure to Home Lab PIP, public IP. So I'll go with the default settings here and I'll review and create. Let me cross check it here. I have already selected my subscription, selected my VNG instance name, selected my region, the gateway type is VPN, VPN type is root base. I've already selected the SKU. This is associated, again I told you, with the pricing tier, so be careful as per your requirement and consider the pricing as well, costing as well. So this is the related thing like virtual network I already selected, that I created, and this is the gateway network. This gateway network will be created while we'll be deploying this, and this will be using a public IP. So Azure will deploy a public IP and associate this public IP to this virtual network gateway. So I have given the name here and I'll review and create. So in summary, you can see again the detail, you can review the detail and review the things, whatever things you have selected. So, and then you will click on create. So guys, this will take something around 25 or 30 minutes or so. So I'll be pausing the video for some time and then I'll be back again. Alright, welcome guys. So while this virtual network gateway deployment is in progress, let me share the screen with you. And let me talk about something related to the virtual machine. So yeah, so we already have a virtual machine here which is in stop state. If you can see, just to save the cost, I stopped it. It is a best practice to stop the resources if you are not using it to save the cost. So I'll be starting this server. So let's start this machine, and meanwhile these things are happening. You can see the virtual network gateway deployment is in progress. So virtual machine starting. So meanwhile, let's get back to the slide, or rather not on slide. Let me give you the tool detail further. The diagram itself, like the conceptual diagram for my Azure side-to-side VPN network and on-premises network. So in the right side, my on-premises lab is there. You can see this is my on-premises lab. This is my Wi-Fi router. This is the symbolic icon for my public IP, which you can see here. I have written Wi-Fi public IP. This is my routing and RAS Windows server, which will be routing the traffic which will be coming from my on-premises or like home lab, and will be destined to Azure, my Azure VNet, which I'll be mentioning here. I'll be creating a demand dial interface here in this routing and RAS server, which will be performing the routing. So we'll be doing a couple of configuration here. I'll show you how to do it. Now coming back to the Azure side, in the left area, this is my Azure cloud. This is the virtual private network gateway, which is for which the deployment is in progress, and this is the public IP, which I denoted here with this diagram. So which will be deployed again and associated with this virtual private network gateway. So and before this virtual private network gateway, that is still getting deployed, we created the local network gateway, right? In this video I showed we first created the local network gateway. So guys, again, local network gateway is nothing but we are simply telling our Azure cloud tiering configuration, like about our on-premises or home lab network, that this is the public IP of my router, to which you will be having your virtual private network gateway will be having a direct site-to-site connection as shown here in the arrow. Okay, so we'll be we already configured the static IP here, and the static IP was Wi-Fi router IP. Okay, and we already mentioned our local IP CIDR notation here, classless interdomain notation here, which is behind this public IP in my Wi-Fi device. So that is 192.168.0/24. So when this particular virtual network gateway will be deployed, we will be creating a site-to-site connection to this particular VPN, between this particular VPN to this particular local network gateway. So this site-to-site VPN will be associated with this connection. This connection will be associated with virtual private network gateway and local network gateway, and with this public IP, it will be creating a tunnel. How it will be creating a tunnel over the internet? How it will be creating a VPN, IPsec VPN tunnel, to our on-premises network or home lab, that I'll be showing you guys. So this is pretty much about the conceptual diagram again to make you understand. And let's go back to Azure and let's see. Yeah, you can see that virtual machine has successfully powered on, but then 16 minutes, we started deploying this virtual network gateway. So it takes around 20 to 30 minutes. I already told you. So it will take a couple of more minutes. Meanwhile, what we can probably do, we can check the virtual machine. So to check the virtual machine again, we can check it from directly from here, but I want to show you, like, this is a virtual machine. So you can directly even go and AshTechie Azure. This is the server name. So this is a network security group related. This is the network interface related to this. This is the disk of the virtual machine. This is the virtual machine itself. Okay, so you can there's something called, if you scroll down, there's something called, let me show you, boot diagnostics, which shows the detail, like, which you can see this is not the console actually, wherein you can control like ILO or something, but this is something like you can for Windows Server, you can see that your machine is booting or your machine is up or not. You can refresh the screen from here. The machine is already up. If you go to overview of this virtual machine, you see that there's no public IP. This is the private IP, right, of this virtual machine, 10.3.2.4, which I already told you in the slide itself. If you go back to the slide, Azure VM IP will be 10.3.2.4. You can have any IP within this particular subnet range. This particular subnet range that we have defined. This is the VNet 10.3.0.0/22. This is my workload subnet, and this is one IP I have selected. You can select anything, okay? And it's not necessary that you take the 10.3.0.0. You can select anything as you want, IP addressing scheme. So yeah, so coming back to Azure portal. So this is 10.3.2.4 is my, you can see the virtual machine is up, and even if you try to ping your, this is the my REST server. Actually, this is the routing remote access server. So let me quickly show you the name. First name SRV01. As I already told you, this will be acting as my remote and REST server. And if I check the IP address, you can see this is the IP 192.168.1.188 that I again mentioned here in the slide. This will be my routing and remote access server, and this is my range of the Wi-Fi virtual network behind the public static IP which I have taken. So now go back to this and let me minimize this. If you see this IP 10.3.2.4, okay. So let's try to ping this 10.3.2.4. You can see you're not able to ping. If you try to RDP, you will not be able to RDP this. Why? Because VPN gateway and side-to-side VPN connection is not in place. And even that gets created, we will have to first configure our routing and remote access server, to connect and route the traffic destined for Azure network from our on-premises home lab. So it will not be connected. It will not RDP. It will not ping. It will not do anything. Okay. But however, as I told you that ultimately, end of the day, we'll have to define the static route again for the traffic that will be destined from our home lab or on-prem to our Azure network. We'll have to define a static route in our Wi-Fi router. So in general, in any of the Wi-Fi router that you have at your home, generally we have the facility to define the static route. I'll show you how I define the static route, but let me show you the tracer, though it will not be successful. But let me show you how it is trying to take the path. It is directly going to this particular server, SSRV s.hdomain.edu, which is 192.168.1.188, which is my routing and remote access server again. Okay, so in case you do not define the static route in your Wi-Fi device, you can only trace route, or you can only ping, or you can only connect RDP or SSH if it is a Linux machine. You can only connect to your Azure, virtual machine through this routing and remote access server. But what in case you have, in on-premises or in your home lab, you have multiple machines and you do not want to, specify a static route in each and every machine. So that is the reason we are defining the static route there in the router itself. So if I show you my router, let's say this is my router. Let me get the username and password. So this is my router, Wi-Fi device. If I go to local network and if I go to routing, If I go to static route, you see I have defined this particular route. See that RT to Azure, which is a egress route. Egress means outbound traffic, which is going out from your home network or on premises, which is again called outbound or egress. Similarly, for inbound incoming traffic, that is called inbound or ingress traffic. So this is egress, and this is something not related to when. This is something related to LAN, and the network address we have specified is our Azure network. You can see in the slide. What is my Azure network is 10.3.0.0. Okay, and subnet is 10.3.2.0. Subnet mask is /24, like 255.255.252.0. So what I want is to define the static route here for egress traffic. I named this route like route to Azure. So for this Azure network like 10.3.0.0, the subnet mask is shown like 255.255.252.0. The gateway should be 192.168.1.188. Why this should be the gateway? Because this will be routing the traffic. We'll show you how. Okay, I'll show you how. I'll configure the demand dial interface, and I'll be configuring the route there in the demand dial interface. So whenever you try to connect, or whenever any sort of traffic outbound or egress traffic goes to the cloud, it gets connected. It automatically gets connected. That's why it is called demand dial interface, because it connects on demand. You don't need to connect. It's not like you need to connect it every time. It is always connected, because end of the day, some monitoring traffic or any traffic like ping or something, even if you ping, it gets connected. Even if you RDP, it gets connected on demand. So it is kind of always connected side to side VPN connection. So this is how I define the route here. So I'll simply close it, and let's see if the things are done here. You can see the deployment is successful for this particular you know virtual network gateway again. So a minute ago, so it took around 25 to 30 minutes again. So it generally take sometime it takes 20 minutes, sometime it takes 25 minutes or 30 minutes or so. So you can see the local network gateway we created here. So it is here. Okay, you can see the virtual network gateway here. It is created here. It is giving the resource group name. It is giving the virtual network gateway name, the gateway type, okay, and the virtual network name. So what we probably need to do, we need to create a connection here. So this is something, let me show you again. This is the virtual network gateway. So what we'll be doing, we are configuring, we are creating a connection. So this connection is, again, let me go back to this diagram. So by making this connection, this is the virtual private network gateway which has just been deployed, which was opened, in which we are in the connections. So we are going to create a connection between this virtual network gateway and this local network gateway which we have created. This will be a side-to-side connection. So this local network gateway is nothing but our defining our on premises or home lab network here, wherein we define the public IP of our Wi-Fi device, this Wi-Fi device, and the CIDR range of the local IP addresses that are sitting behind this public IP at my on-prem Wi-Fi router. So this connection will actually create a VPN tunnel here over the internet between this public IP and this public IP. You got it? So this connection will be created, but it will not be connected until unless we configure the routing and REST server here. Routing and remote access server here. So we'll have to create a demand dial interface again, I'm telling you, and I'll let you know guys how to create it. So let's go back to here again. So if you try to add the connection, it will ask you the name of the connection. The name I decided is AshTechie site to site Azure to home lab. You can name like anything. So this connection will not be a VNet to VNet. This connection will not be express route. This is what we are doing here is site to site IPsec VPN. So that's why I selected this site to site IPsec VPN. And what we are doing is we are creating the connection from this particular virtual network gateway itself. So it is taking the name by default. Here we have to choose the local network gateway. Which local network gateway? Let me show you again. This local network gateway which we have created. Okay, so this network gateway which we have created here, so I have selected this network gateway. Here we need to specify a pre-shared key. So I'll be pausing because this is the kind of password. You define pre-shared key again in your Wi-Fi network to connect your Wi-Fi network. So similarly, this is the authentication key. If you go, a mixture of letter and numbers used to establish encryption for connection. The same shared key must be used in both the virtual network and local network gateways. If your gateway device does not provide the one, you make one up here and provide it into your device. So this is the key which will be defining, configuring there in a routing and remote access server as well. Okay, so this will be using the IKE protocol. IPsec use the IKE protocol, so IKE will be using IKE version 2. So I'll be defining that since this is a kind of password authentication key, pre-shared key, that I'll be defining and mentioning, configuring in the routing and REST server as well. So I'll not be showing this key to you guys, sorry about that. And nothing else we have to configure. We simply need to define this pre-shared key and we need to click on OK. You see, subscription is already selected, resource group is great, we don't need to select. Location is already coming as per as subscription and resource groups. Okay, so let me pause the video for a second, then I'll soon get back to you guys. So welcome back guys. You see that I've already created this connection here. It's getting created. I define my I have provided the pre-shared key keyword, and then just initiated the creation of this, and it is getting created. The connection is getting created here. So once this connection gets created, let's say it is created, but the state is unknown. So if you see here, this is AshTechie VNG home lab. Okay, this is AshTechie site to site Azure home lab. So this is the site to site connection Connection type is site to site IPsec that we have taken, and the peer is peer of what? Peer of this particular VNG, virtual network gateway, that is from Azure to home lab. Okay, that is facing from Azure to going towards home lab, and the peer is our local network gateway that we initially created as AshTechie LNG. You can see the difference in the name. VNG, virtual network gateway, LNG. This is how I named it, local network gateway. So this is again home lab to Azure. This will be, home lab to Azure. So this is how the connection is paired, and this is how it is. If you refresh it is unknown. Status is unknown. So now what we need to do, I'm sorry again, what we need to do, we need to go into our routing and REST server. Okay, click here, administrative tools. So routing and REST server, if you want, you can, share your feedback in comments. In comments you can mention if you want me to create a separate video to, you know, let you know guys how to install the routing and REST, components. It's quite easy. So I have already installed these components, so I'm not going to cover it here. Okay, let me open it. Routing and remote access. So it's taking some time to open. Meanwhile, let me show you something. So this connection is okay, but let's go to the overview here of this virtual private network, and you see there's a public IP I talked about. We named the public IP as well, right? So this public IP is the public IP of this particular virtual network gateway. And in the local network gateway, we defined the public IP of our Wi-Fi device, static IP that we have taken from our internet service provider. So I'll be copying this particular private IP because this I need to define in our routing and remote access server. So now let me open the notepad. Paste it here. This is the name. I don't need the name here. So let me cut it. This is the IP. So you can see I'm in the Ash server, routing and remote access. I'm in the network interface, guys. Okay. And if you see IP version 4, static route, the route is already defined there. Home lab to Azure. Okay. Let me delete this route. I did it actually before, that's why. So now the no route is there. Okay, I'm going into network interface. Okay, so home lab to Azure side to side VPN router. I'm deleting it. Okay, so now if you check this again, no static route, no demand dial interface. So let's create a new one. Okay, right click here in the blank area, new. Next, you can name anything like remote router, whatever you want. So I'll be doing naming like AshTechie route to Azure, something like new name. Okay, I'm trying. So we will be using, why we'll be using this, we'll be using it to connect to the virtual network. So connect using virtual private network. I'll select. So if you remember, we have given pre-shared key, so we use the IKV2 there as a protocol, IKV protocol for IPsec. So we'll be using the same, and this is where enter the name or IP address of the router you're connecting to. Hostname or the IP address such as Microsoft.com or whatever. Okay, so this is the destination IP. So this is the public IP. This public IP is the public IP of your virtual network gateway. Okay, so this public IP we have to define here. Okay, so yeah, so what we'll be using, we'll be using root IP packets on this interface. So we'll be routing the IP packets. So we'll select this, and this is where, like, to activate this demand dial connection, you must add a static route to the network, specify the IP address of the remote network interface this network will communicate with. So this is where we will be telling this to our this particular Ash SRV remote and a RAS server, that hey Ash SRV routing and remote access server, you need to reach 10.3.0.0. Let me just check it again for you. 10.3.0.0, right? 10.3.0.0/22. You can see it. So this is the network we will be defining. Okay, /22. So subnet mask will be this. Okay, so 10.3.0.0 what was that? 252.0. Metric is 16. Okay, so this is where we define the Azure network here, so that if anything comes as a egress traffic from home lab to this particular route, routing and remote access server, it will route the IP packets for this particular network destination. Next, you can give any username. So let's say AZ Connect. Next, finish. Okay, now what we need to do, we need to go into the property. You can see this demand dial interface has been created. If you go to the static route, the route has come again, right? The route has come again, which we have deleted earlier since we have specified the route. That's why the route has come again. Now we'll go into the security, and what we'll be doing, we'll be giving the key here that we defined there while creating the virtual private network gateway. So I'll be again pausing the video for a sec and come back. Okay guys, welcome back again. So yeah, so I defined, I provided the pre-shared key there, and then I clicked on OK. So we are here back again. So everything is done. demand dial interface has been created since we defined the the root there, the static root came here. So back to the demand dial interface, we simply if right click and click on connect. If everything is configured properly, it should be connected, and you can see it is connected here. So now what we need to see, we were not able to trace root. If we trace it again, let's see what happens. You can see the trace is complete. You saw the trace route before. Since the demand dial interface and VPN gateway was not set up, even though the root was there in the router Wi-Fi device, as I shown you, like how I configured, but trace was not complete. So now it is now connected. If you even check from any of the machine, it will be shown as connected. And if you go to the connection again, it will take some time to reflect here as connected. So you'll have to wait for some time, but it is actually connected. And if you go to the local network gateway and go to the connection, refresh it, it will show as connected in some time. So meanwhile, let me show you, like, this is a different machine. Like, this is my server, which is routing REST server. Okay, this is the IP 192.168.1.188. Since we have defined the root, so it should take the root. This is a different one. And now, oh my god, you check the host name of this. This is my Ash server, which is actually my home server, on which this virtualization is happening. Everything is happening. You can see ESXi, everything here. So even if I trace it from here, 10.3.2.4, let's see how it goes. Just wait and watch. Trace is getting complete. And why it is going to 188 our routing address server? Since we have defined the route in the routing address server and in our Wi-Fi device as well. So if we ping, if we try to connect, if we try to establish any kind of communication to our Azure, Azure cloud network from our on-premises or home lab, the thing will be going through our routing and remote access servers. Since this is where we configured our this 188 192.168.1.188 is where we configured our routing and remote access services and configured our demand dial interface. And in the Azure part, we configured our local network gateway and virtual network gateway. We created a site to site connection. So let's try to ping from here. I already disabled the firewall since it is our test lab, so we can try ping, and you can see we are able to ping this private IP. So guys, my network is something different. You can see it is 192.168.1.0 network, and mm, I'm sorry. Okay, so if you go to this particular VM, you can see in the overview, you can again see the IP. This is the private IP, and we are able to ping, we are able to trace route, right? This private IP. And if we try, let's say let's try to mstsc slash v rdp at 10.3.2.4. Let's see what happens if we are able to rdp or not. It would be a bit slow. Why? Because I've taken the slower tier, but yes, we can rdp. So if I simply give my username, it's a Windows 10 machine. Just to save the configuration, what is the password I have taken? But anyway, we are able to RTP this machine. Okay, let me pause the video and check what password I set. Okay, welcome guys again. Yeah, so the password was set differently. So let me come out from this. I just cross check the password. So it's AshAdmin is the username and my password. I was earlier typing the wrong password. So yeah, you can see we are able to RDB this server. The server name is AshAZSRV, and this is what the server name in the Azure. This is what the IP which is highlighted in the Azure. This is what the server name, and this is what we are able to RDP. So what I think what we have learned today should be useful for you guys. Okay, it will take some time to RDP. So yeah, so let's back to the slide. It was a quite long lesson, so go to the summary. So what we have learned today is how to create a site-to-site VPN in Azure. Additionally, I have given the tour of my virtual lab. So we created a local local network gateway. We defined the our public static public IP of our Wi-Fi device there in the local local network gateway. We define the virtual LAN IPs which is sitting behind. That is our private LAN range like 192.168.1.0/24. And we created the site-to-site VPN after having the virtual private network gateway post creating the local network gateway created. Okay, so what we have learned today is how to create a site-to-site VPN in Azure to connect your home lab to office or your on-prem to office to your Azure cloud. I hope you guys enjoyed this learning with me. So I'll keep on uploading various kind of be it Azure related or Google or AWS or VMware or Ventil or Terraform, infrastructure as code, DevOps, be it Azure DevOps or Ansible automation or AWS automation or anything. So if you liked it, please do share your feedback and comments, and this will be my first interactive and very good sharing, knowledge sharing as a YouTube video on my YouTube channel. I just created my YouTube channel on day before yesterday itself, so I do have let me go to the last slide. So I would like to thank you for your time. So again, I'm Ashish Sharma and I prefer to be called as AshTechie. You can reach me to AshTechie by emailing me to ashish@ashtechie.com. You can tweet me at ashtechie777. You can go to my blog Okay, and you can reach me there as well. That is blogs.ashtechie.com. If you open it, let me open it in front of you. I do, I recently started blogging as well, so I do write blogs as well. So this is my blog site. So this will give you all about me. Okay, what certification I have, my link, like my GitHub link. I do have GitHub. I started GitHub repository, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, my Instagram, and I'll be posting very good stuff here. Like I posted something around vSphere 8. I posted something around learning DevOps path. I posted about something related to Wintel, like if SFC system file checker cannot repair, how can you use DISM DISM utility to repair your Windows image. And I posted something about Google Cloud VMware Engine, what's new in August 2022. I have posted a blog about GitHub certification, which is available for Azure partners. Okay, whosoever is Microsoft Azure partners, can apply for this certification, and then they will have to pass, of course, proper certification tests and all. And this is something my first blog as my digital CV. So that's my CV. So thank you guys. That's all. Please, uh, do subscribe and share my channel link with your within your circle. And if you do like, please share your feedback and do subscribe it. Thank you. I'll keep on posting. Thank you guys. Bye bye. Bye for now.